I was feeling like a scarecrow, overstuffed with brittle, tasteless fluff, and topped off to the gag reflex with whatever this bitter drink is I've been binging. So I take in the sacrament of a red steak and go out to walk the blood back into my veins. I walk with a friend into dark green woods. We talk about the room where people sit before we're reborn. You know, the one made mostly of light. He takes a photo of me looking straight into the sun, and I'm warm. We crash clumsy through a balsam thicket, using careless voices for such a careful place. And we jump a big, fat doe. We pause to watch her streak away to the east. Moments later, we hear a shot. I go back the next day, alone, to sink a little deeper, sit a little longer, to ask the moss to soak up all the noise I've made. Please. I find in my path a fallen branch, shaped like a fork-horned buck. And I've got my gun today, so I say, okay, I'm ready. I walk how a buck might walk, cutting across the wind, its stories rushing through me. I grunt and turn the earth with a hoof, scraping my own story there in the soil. I bed downwind in the brown leaves and wait. Beech trees hold themselves together much more gracefully than me. I try to wind my limbs around myself like that, but find I'll need to grow another 100 years. Fine. I've got time. I hear something fizzing in the ground all around, like I'm sitting on a hive of bees, like power lines, like a first date buzz. It takes me a few minutes to focus my eyes and see the springtails, so small, popping around in the papery leaves. Of course, silence is just us ignoring the roaring always underfoot. I remember the myth of the hunter, the one I just started writing, right now. The girl who'd had her fill of one world, so she looked in the pines for another. The jays huffed and puffed at her, blue as a dying propane flame. The squirrels screamed their machine gun screams, but it wasn't as bad as the mean masses she'd never even met. She wove a tunic out of twigs, wrapped a bird's nest in her hair, wore a serpent round her wrist to sniff the wind. She chewed a wad of wintergreen to mask her meaty breath. She groaned like a swaying pine, and all was quiet. She learned to cry so like a doe in heat that the coyotes circle in, chirping. She sat under a tree and heard voices from the west, laughing, twig snapping, and then closer, the pounding of hooves. She raised her rifle, a wand of earthly goods, metals, wood, and fire, and shot the doe through the heart the moment she stretched her movie star neck, collarbone, shoulder, thigh, from behind the emerald curtain. She slipped off the golden robe and forever wore it as her own. She swallowed her flesh from ankle to nose. She thought, it's good to be home. While she washed it all down with milk warm from the teat and left on the ground the black waxy hooves for mice and mushrooms to eat. She turned the bones into buttons, the fat into soap, plucked a snow-white hair from the tail to float a silver hook to catch a speckled trout. Every spring she listens for the lost and orphaned fawns, bleeding helpless through the hills, and she nurses them in the greening valley grass until they've drunk enough to run